Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 41. We're all standing on the shoulders of what other people have done before us, but you're supposed to take that and add your own sauce. It can be intimidating, believe me. Steven Soderbergh.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free film audiobook from Audible. And today's show is sponsored by Filmmaking Hacks, how to shoot and market your first film. It is a course that is developed by Indie Film Hustle and myself. So if you're interested in taking a look at it, go to indiefilmhustle.com/film school. I think you'll like it. So guys, today I'm bringing back my first repeat guest, Paddy Bird. Paddy Bird from Inside the Edit. We had such a great time talking last time we did, which was episode number 13, that I had to bring him back. He's one of the fan favorites, and everybody that listened to that episode really, really loved Paddy and me just kind of sitting down and hashing out, two editors just hashing out old school kind of stuff. So it's a really, really cool episode to check out. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about what it takes really to become a freelance editor, and what he did, what I did, and what it really is to do to learn the craft of not just editing, but learn the craft of working as an editor, which is a completely different craft than just editing, and how you handle clients, how you go out and get work, how you set up demo reels, how you do all that kind of cool stuff. So this episode is editor-centric, obviously, but a lot of the things that we talk about can easily translate to other avenues and other disciplines within the film industry. As far as freelancing is concerned, is about getting work, is about sustaining yourself as an artist and working. So don't just shut off the podcast because it's like, oh, it's just going to talk about editing for the rest of the hour. No, we're going to talk about editing, but think and look beyond that, because there's a lot of gems inside of this conversation that I wish I would have heard of when I was starting out as a freelancer. So without further ado, here is my interview with the incomparable Paddy Bird. So guys, welcome back to the show, Mr. Paddy Bird from Inside the Edit. He is our first and only return guest so far on the show. So that's how good he was the first time around that I wanted to bring him back. And also his episode is one of the best received and most downloaded episodes that we've ever had on the show. So I wanted to bring Paddy back and talk a little bit. Now, just a warning to everybody who's listening. We are going to geek out a little bit hard on Star Wars at the beginning of this episode, because when we're recording this, the movie had just come out. So Paddy, man, thanks. Welcome back to the show, bro.
Alex, thank you very much for having me again. It was a pleasure the first time, and I'm sure it will be a pleasure this time around. Thank you.
So, Star Wars, thoughts?
Oh, man.
Editing. How was the editing?
I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, it was just, I have to go and see it again for the editing.
And no spoilers. No spoilers
at all. But all I will say is, wow, I was just blown away. It was worth the wait. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I really, really loved what he did. He took it forward in a really beautiful way. There were so many fantastic moments. The set pieces were great. The action was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Just everything about it was just, I came out feeling deeply fulfilled.
As a Star Wars fan, I would agree with you. I completely agree. You walked out, like I walked out of it and I was just like, wow. You could, yeah. While it was quiet for probably 20 minutes. I went with a friend of mine, and around 20 minutes, we just kept like, hey, let's just go walk to lunch. Let's not talk about it for a minute, and
let it all set in. Let it
wash over you. And the thing I loved about the movie the most is that you can tell it's basically a love letter to the franchise. It is so much love. You could sense it coming off the screen that everybody who worked on it was just absolutely in love with there was not one guy walking around like, I'm a freaking Star Wars movie. Everybody, probably from the PA, the intern, all the way up to JJ, everybody was so reverent of the material and so respectful of the material that he just, I think he nailed it out of the park. I wish we could talk details about the story, but we won't because it's just too soon. But
it's too soon. It's too soon.
It's way too soon. I was worried. Look, I was worried to death because I wanted to watch. I hadn't even bought the tickets yet, and I was like, man, where am I going to go see this? And a buddy of mine who works at Disney called me. He's like, hey, do you want to do? There's going to have some screenings on the back lot. Do you want to go? I'm like, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. When he's like 10 o'clock on Friday morning, I'm like, pick me up at 8 so we can make sure we get a good seat. So we did, we went, and the one reason I wanted to do it, it wasn't the biggest screen in the world. It was a nice screen. It was perfect, but it wasn't like an IMAX or anything. I'm going to go back to see it on IMAX, but I knew for a fact that there was not going to be one person talking. There would be no cell phones. And everybody stays. It's an LA phenomenon. Everyone stays for the end credits. Like no one leaves until the end. It's an LA phenomenon.
The 15-minute end credits.
Yeah, everyone stays and no one talks. It's like it's just an LA thing. If you're in an industry screening of some sort somewhere in the world, that would happen as well. But here it's just everyone stays. And then afterwards, I went off. I don't know if you saw it or not, Patty. I took some pictures of some stormtroopers that were on the back lot, and I wore my favorite Star Wars T-shirt of all time. It says Star Wars number.
You really got in character, didn't you? You really did.
Oh no, dude. No, it's just one T-shirt, dude. I saw people dressed up like full blown. I was just like, I didn't have a lightsaber or anything. I don't even own a lightsaber yet. But
well, it's Christmas. You never know what Santa's going to bring.
No, there might be a Kylo Ren coming in my stocking. I don't know. My wife's looking at it. But anyway, so I was wearing my T-shirt and it says number 1 Star Wars fan, but it has a picture of the Enterprise on it.
Ooh,
brilliant. It's like the most brilliant. I literally walked up to the stormtrooper, and as I was walking up to take a picture, the guy started pissing himself. He's like, that shirt's amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out of I wanted to get to break the tension in the room. Let's get it out of the way. No.
I had pretty much the same experience. I mean, if you want to, if you're a Star Wars fan, you basically have to stay away from the internet until you watch it. And I was not prepared to do that because
right. Oh no,
I have to use, like most people on the planet, the internet. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and watch this first thing Friday at like lunchtime.
Yeah, you have to.
And
you have
to do this, otherwise, you're just
done.
People are going to talk about it at, in.
Oh, and then the second I went online, people started talking about it, and people are trying to be as respectful as possible about spoilers and stuff. But
there's always someone.
There's always someone, man.
There's always someone.
There's always
someone who's gone to the dark side.
It's and you know what? I read an article that the internet, the Star Wars literally broke the internet. It
doesn't surprise me. Really?
It dropped. The usage of internet dropped worldwide on opening day.
Wow.
5% in France, like 7% in Germany. The US dropped about 4 or 5%. That people just were not going online because they were afraid of what would, getting a spoiler. So when I read that, I'm like, holy crap, man. Like, how powerful is that franchise? Like, it's the most powerful franchise there is. There's just, and now they're going to, I'm the one thing I want to, and then I'll get off the Star Wars boat, but I'm curious to see where and how they can maintain this for the next 10 years. Like, we've been starved from Star Wars for 10 years, and arguably since Jedi, a lot of people's opinion, since Jedi, we've been starved from Star Wars. But now they're going to be doing one every year. Every year. I want to see how they can maintain it.
That is freaky. I mean, I can't even begin to think of how complicated that is going to be. I mean, obviously, like anything, they kept a lot of things open and stuff like that at the end, and you think, oh, where's this going to go? Where's that going to go? But
it's a continuing saga, and in the next years there's going to be Rogue One, which is an anthology, part of the anthology, which is just another story. I think it takes place how Princess Leia got the plans for the Death Star. That's the movie Rogue One. That's the whole. So that the group that went and died and did all the stuff to go get it. According to Princess Leia, that's what that movie's about. And then when the next one will be part 8. And then after that's the Han Solo movie. And then part 9.
Man, they got it all figured out. Wow.
Well, they're just using the Marvel, they're using the Marvel, We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Business
template.
paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it works. It's been working pretty good for
Why
them.
not? Why not? I mean, it's as you say, it's been working pretty good for them.
Yeah, exactly. So I did buy some stock of Disney. I'd suggest you all do the same, because they're going to be doing well for many years to come. Anyway, so off Star Wars now. Now it's off. We're done. I wanted to bring you back, Patty, to talk a little bit about get into some deeper editing stuff, and I wanted to talk about my experiences and your experiences about making a living as an editor, how you started as an editor, some more detailed stuff about demo reels and things like that. So I'm going to go way, way back. Okay. Way back to when you were just a small lad coming up. What made you first think that you could even make a living as an editor? Because when you did it and when I did it, that wasn't like in the popular stream of things.
It wasn't easy. I mean, it really wasn't. I came in at the start of nonlinear, really, the start
Same
of
here.
digital in the mid 90s, and Avid's an Avid then. I mean,
Avid was 5 years old. 5 years old. It was Avid.
It was 5 years old, and they were 150 grand
easy
for an offline. That wasn't even
right
online. So it was pretty crazy. So. I guess, I mean, I'd always sort of messed around with films, and I'd been obsessed with watching movies and stuff like that and documentaries from a very, very young age. And I did an internship at a magazine when I was about 16, and I learned to use Photoshop, and I think it was Quark Express at the time, and Illustrator.
Ooh, Quark Express.
It's going back a few years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I don't think I was very good at it. But then a friend of mine said, oh, look, you can edit movies now on a computer. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So we started a production company that was affiliated with a charity, and we basically just because we were sort of a charity or working for a charity and doing sort of corporate videos for charities and stuff like that, we managed to get a lot of free time in edit suites around Soho, which was pretty awesome. People would let us in at sort of midnight.
Yeah, sure.
If we gave them a bottle of wine or something like that,
right,
and said, you're just free to work until 7 a.m. until the editors come back in. So I just went crazy on it, to be honest with you. I loved it. It was just like, oh my God, this is a whole new world. This is amazing. And it was around that time as well that, a lot of the linear editors just sort of, they thought Avid was a fad. They thought, oh, this is never going to last,
Right.
I can't remember if I told this story in the last podcast, but I was writing a script. This must have been about 10 years ago, and I was writing a script. So a friend of mine's got a tiny little flat, an apartment in this old village in Italy, the mountains in the Italian Alps. So I used to go.
I think you did
there for real solitude.
I think you did. Yeah, I think you did tell us that story in the last episode.
Okay, well, I won't go into it anymore. But it's listen to the previous episode if you want to hear the end of that story. But it was a phenomenal kind of change, and it hadn't really hit me at that point how big that change was. That for many, many years it was being done a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I just took to it from the age I was sort of 19, 20, and I just went, bang, this is really, really cool. And I locked myself away and literally spent a year in the edit suite and was utterly fascinated by the power that you could have over narrative. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no classical training at all. I didn't go to film school. I didn't even go to university. I was just piecing stuff together and going, wow. And we had all these clients coming in. And I would do anything. I'd edit through the night on an actor's show reel for, buy me a pizza and, I'll work for food, because I was gaining that, that whole, I recognized from a very young age, I need thousands of hours of experience to get my speed up, to get my creative speed up. So it was, I knew pretty early on that I was in a unique position, but of course it's all changed now. It's completely changed. You can buy,
you can get free software
any
now.
software for
it's free software.
Free software. You can do it on your iPad. It's a kind of crazy thing that that's happened with the industry, and it's awesome. I mean, with all my tutorials and Inside the Edit, I'm not confined to the edit suite anymore. I spend most of my time with my laptop. I've got a MacBook Air, little drive. And I was just like, I spent 15, 20 years editing in edit facilities in Soho in London or at the BBC or something like that. Now I just sort of go, where do I want to edit today? And I just...
Starbucks. Let's go to Starbucks, right?
I'll go to Starbucks. I'll go to an art gallery. I'll look at some art for an hour, get inspired, or a museum, go and see some old stuff. And then I'll just sit and, make a tutorial or, edit something, edit a promo or something like that. It's amazing. It's phenomenal what's happened. I thought I was lucky 20 years ago, but, people coming into the industry now, I mean, it's so amazing. I'm blown away by it all, just all of it, completely and utterly mobile. And you're just free to create in the most amazing way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you my quick story of when I started out. It's similar to your story, believe it or not. I was a tape dubber in a commercial house, and they had an Avid next door to the dub station. So I was like, let me just jump in there and start learning. I literally just went in and I took the Avid course. I got certified. I took the Avid certification course, just like that 2-day weekend or something like that, just to get it going. And I had to drive, and this is like my uphill in snow barefoot story. But I drove an hour a day to this job, both ways, hour there, hour back. And I would go early morning because that's the only time I could get in before the editors got in. And I would stay late nights. And this is something you could do when you're young and don't have a family and things like that. So I did that for almost a year until finally I decided, you know what, I'm going to go off and make a living as an editor. And it's just good stuff, crazy stuff that you do when you're young. Like, you like analyze stuff. You're like, what's going to be, how can I make money? What's going to be my overhead? Before I was like, let's just go off and do it. But the funniest thing, do you remember what the first thing you ever edited was, like professionally? Like you got paid to be an editor?
Yeah, I do actually. It was a daytime weight loss program. And I walked into the edit. It was the first time I was a freelancer, and I was getting paid to do 3 days tidying up. It was like a half-hour show. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon. It's for people who want to lose weight, and they put people on a diet and exercise and stuff like that.
I've never heard of this concept. How does that work? I'm joking.
And I remember walking in because I had no training, and I walked in and met the director, and I was just like really I was really anxious. And the director went, "Oh yeah, great to meet you. The agency says so many great things about you." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Don't know what they're going to say. That sounds
because I haven't edited anything yet. Okay,
I haven't edited anything. This is going to be interesting." And she went, "Okay, so let me just tell you about the project. The cutaways are in there." And I was sitting there going, I wonder what a cutaway is. I better phone a friend of mine. I have no idea what a cutaway is. And she's going, this is this. She's using all this terminology. And of course, I'd done all this stuff. I just sort of worked it out in my own head. I didn't really have a name for anything.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I didn't know the software that well. And then
that's always dangerous, man. Oh God, that was scary.
It's dangerous. So she came and she go, "Can we put this title up and can we spin it around a bit and stuff like that?" And I'd hidden the Avid manual in the toilet, and every single time she asked me to do something that I didn't know, I just said, "So I'm just gonna go to the toilet," and I went out to the toilet and I I was like, okay, so you plot keyframes like that, and then you pull the title, and you could spin it around on the rotation axis. Okay, great. Then you come back out. I went to the toilet about 15 times.
I was like, yeah, it's like, my God, this kid has a problem.
It's like.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Did he go out last night and party, or did he eat something that didn't agree with him? It was just, but no, I didn't know. So it was a real trial by fire. But that's the thing. It's like you just got tossed into the deep end. Yeah, and I survived. I was lucky. There was definitely some hairy moments where I was like, she was like saying, yeah, what do you think about this? And I was like, okay, don't really know what I'm going to say here. And I just sort of, made something up, which she seemed to have believed.
Yeah,
but,
I'll tell you that, like when I was starting out and I was, in room with client, always was nerve-wracking, because if they asked for something that you didn't know how to do, or you didn't, because if you didn't know the software well enough, you couldn't figure it out. Like, and I became a master of BS. So I would like, here, watch this or do this. And like, while I tried figuring it, I'm like, hold on a second. Oh, I got to restart the system. So while it's restarting, I'm thinking in my head, something wrong with the Avid. Let me restart the system. And I restarted the system 6 times the first time I did it, and figured it all out. And like, sometimes I remember that one of my first gigs, I actually edited the whole thing offline, and I did not connect the time code to the tapes. So when I went to batch it, I couldn't. Like, all the work was gone. We had to do it from scratch. But my first project that I remember was, and it's a little bit more fun than weight loss, I have to say. It was I was in Florida, and there was a crazy guy who used to wrestle alligators and sharks. Now,
man, that sounds like fun.
Oh, dude, it was. I still have it. I have VHSs of it in my closet. That footage, this guy would go out. And when I say wrestle alligators, I'm like, oh, everyone sees. Well, I don't know everyone, because I'm from Florida, so I just assume everyone's seen a wrestling alligator match. But you go into a pit, and there's like a tame-ish alligator who's like fat and doesn't move, and they kind of like, and the guy will run around and jump on him and hold his mouth and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, that's not what this guy does. This guy would go into the Everglades, into the swamp, jump into the water.
My God.
No, dude, and it was shooting on mini DV. All right, so everything was shot on mini DV. Go into the water, go into alligator holes.
Whoa!
No, alligator holes, and drag out 7-footers, 8-footers. I saw him bring out a 13-footer. The man was probably in his late 40s at that time. He was in the most amazing shape I'd ever seen a human being in. Or maybe in his early 50s at that point. He had the grip of a vice, but when he shook your hand, he was like almost a limp, very limp when he shook your hand. Manny. And so
this guy sounds like a proper Crocodile Dundee.
Oh no, he is. No, he was. They called him Tarzan of the Everglades. And he would go in and just kind of go in and do pull this guys out. And then one day he brought me footage. And by the way, I had a ball with this footage. Like, can you imagine? That's your first gig. And they're like, here, give it to the kid. The kid will edit it. And I edited this insane thing. And I brought in music, copywritten music. I didn't give a shit. It was like, fuck it. And I just brought in whatever music I thought was cool. And people were like, this is awesome. So that was on my demo reel, which we'll get a demo reels in a second. I was on my demo reel for years, because people were like, what the hell? So the best is, like, one day I'm talking to the camera guy and him, because we became good friends, because they were brand new to this whole process. And I said, what would have been good, man? Like, all you have is this out of water stuff. I got no underwater stuff to cut to. So I just only can cut to stuff outside. I have no coverage. Wrong thing to say, because the next day I get a phone call. It gets to the front operator's like, Alex, there's some crazy people calling you. That's something about the swamp. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Manny. Put him through. And I go Manny, and Manny and Mark, the cameraman, is like, Alex, we're on our way. We just got this amazing footage. We went into this pit inside a cave with an alligator, and we pulled it out. And I'm like, they literally came from the swamp. They stunk of alligator. His fingernails were almost pulled back because they pulled out like a 15-foot alligator out of his den.
Whoa.
Pulled him up onto, I'm like, by the way, he's never been bitten, ever. It never been bitten by anything. It's insane, this guy. The guy has a way with alligators. It was not even funny. So anyway, we go through this whole thing, and then later he starts jumping on like tiger sharks and stuff in in the flats of the Everglades. Fascinating footage. I still have a ton of it. They went off to work with the Jackass boys. Remember Jack?
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah,
Jackass.
Yeah.
He was. If you've seen Jackass,
crazy dudes.
Yeah, if you've seen Jackass, you've seen Manny. If you've ever seen episodes, anytime there's an animal, Manny's in the background. They became Paramount hired him as like the official wrangler. Like they wouldn't allow the boys to do anything without Manny there. So, and that was my first experience as an editor. So it was downhill from there, as they say. So
it's unbelievable. I mean, it's stories like that. I think, actually, I'm really glad I'm an editor and not a camera operator. I'm sitting here in my edit suite. Dude, I'll watch the stuff, but I'm not going to go out and shoot that kind of
look. I'll tell
stuff.
you,
that sounds crazy.
I tell you what, the reason why I became an editor was not because of I was like basically being a tape dubber, and I was playing Doom. Remember Doom, the first person video game?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Back in the day, first version of it, and it was like we networked a bunch of computers in the office, and then after hours, a bunch of the geeks of us, I'll stay around and play Doom over Apple Talk. Remember Apple Talk?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So we were doing all that, and then one day I said to myself, if I get fired tomorrow or I lose my job, I'm gonna be PAing. I don't want a PA. I've been a PA. I don't want to be a PA. So I looked over there. I'm like, there's an editing system right next to me. I'm gonna learn that system. And that was the conversation I had in my own head. And then from that moment on, I just stayed for like the next 8-9 months, just building my reel and doing all that stuff. So, which is another question I wanted to ask you. How did you construct your first demo reel? Because that is a black art in itself, especially the first one, because you don't have a lot to do. You don't have a lot to put on it. It's, how did you construct your first? And I'll tell you how I did mine.
Well, unfortunately, I've got a bit of a confession to make, and that is I lied for a good 6 to 12 months of the start of my freelance career.
I lied for the first 2-3 years, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, I didn't tell the truth for quite a while. Actually.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the only way to go.
Yeah. I mean, how do you make for an agency won't represent you in, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in certainly in Europe, they won't represent you unless you've got 3 years of broadcast work. And you're like, okay, well, how do I get 3 years of broadcast work? Well, you got to go and get some broadcast work. And like, okay, well, they're not going to give me any work unless I have a CV that, supports that. Mm-hmm. So I just basically.
Now a CV is what? A demo reel?
I mean, it's a CV. We, for long form in Europe, we don't really have demo reels.
Of course,
we just have a CV. Your career is made on a CV. And what I had some very good advice. I talked about this in the article that I wrote, but some very good advice earlier on was, look, get into there's certain flaws within the system, and the flaws are based around the fact that the people who actually put you in front of the directors or the exec producers are not people who are filmmakers. They're production managers and people like that. And so, it's a bit like fishing. You put your bait up and you see what you can catch. And so I was told that a really good idea would be to go and do some very, very low end work in very well-respected production companies, mm-hmm. or production companies that were specifically known for the type of genre which you want to get into. In my case, it was documentary and stuff like that. So, mm-hmm. And entertainment. And so I did some sort of crappy, minute mood reels and 2-minute kind of taster stuff which no one really saw, mm-hmm. or a little making of for a DVD or something like that. And that was based, and then, it didn't take long before I was being put forward for jobs by my agent with my CV. And the production manager who's obviously always got 2,000 things to do in a day, just goes, oh yeah, this guy here, oh yeah, he's worked at that production company, bang bang bang, okay, yeah, we'll put him in charge, okay, he can go for it. So it was kind of luck. I mean, the amount of editors I know who have had, luck has been a real part of their career trajectory. That first break, that whole, it's someone's ill, someone's
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Reads your CV or something like that. It's but obviously at the same time, you've got to be good at what you're doing. And, opportunity meets, whatever the saying is. I can't remember what is it. It's, you got to be editing all the time. So, I was lucky, but there's so many friends of mine who were at the top of their game as well. They were very, very lucky as well. I think it's like there's not one way in.
Oh no,
there's multiple ways in. You just got to see, where the cracks in the wall are, and just keep on pounding and pounding and pounding. But I was always told very early on to get as broad a show reel or a mood reel or CV as possible, because that really is essential. That's the thing that's going to guarantee you work when there's no work around, if you've got multiple genres on your CV. So
well, I'll tell you what what I heard from what I'm hearing from you. You had an agency and all that, and that's like Rolls Royce kind of stuff for me. There was nothing like that in Florida. Like I started my career in Florida, so in South Florida. So it's not like it was LA. So there was it's a smaller market. It's not a big market at all. It's a big Latino market. So, and I speak Spanish. So that was one of my ways in. Actually, my first job was doing a car dealership, Lincoln Mercury commercial with a baseball star. Wow. And
so was that through a production company? Or
no, that was me sending out my reel. That was literally just me sending out my reel. I would go to all the production companies and I sent out sent out meaning I dropped off my VHS or my 3/4 inch. I had some 3/4 inch at the time as well, and dropped it off. So because I presented myself in a professional manner, and what was on that demo reel is what got me the job. And I'll tell you what I got, what I did. I didn't have any real. I had no commercials on my reel, and I aimed at commercial. That was my demographic, was commercial work, because that was the only thing you could make money with in Miami at the time. It was just commercials. Music videos were not there yet, and they were much more of a niche thing. Long form was so out of the world, like not even close to where I could even attempt to do in. I had no way into any of that, and not that there was much work for that. Promo work, if you could get it at certain, because there was a lot of networks there at the time, which I got into later. But commercials is where I made my start. And what I did was, and this is where the hustle of indie film hustle comes in, is like you, I lied a lot. And now I like to call it fake it till you make it. That's a much gentler, nicer way of saying it.
It's not a lie; it's a gift for fiction. As
that's a brilliant way of putting it. It's a gift for fiction. Yes. So that's brilliant. Actually, that's a really, really good term. That's a T-shirt. So I was working at this commercial house. In the back, in like the storage area, there was a bunch of raw footage. 35 millimeter raw footage on beta tapes. So I would talk to the directors in house. I'm like, hey, can I re-edit some of your footage on for my reel? And I'll create some new commercials for you. Maybe repurpose some of this old footage for you and make you some new fresh commercials for your reel, because I'm young and hip. Because all in honesty, the guys that were being repped by the company, they were in their probably 50s, 60s. These guys have been doing it forever, and they were not getting the jobs that the young guys were getting anymore. But their footage was cool. They had some cool footage sometimes. So I would go off and made a lot of public service announcements, a ton of anti-drug public service, because there was a lot of that footage around. So I'm like, all right, I can, and I'd put in 9 Inch Nails, because at that point for your demo reel, I didn't care. So I just used whatever music I wanted. 9 Inch Nails. girls mixed in with Disney music mixed in it was. I actually am going to put up my demo reel on the site, my old original demo reel.
I want to see that reel. I really want to see that reel.
I'm going to put it up because it's I might put it up with this. I'm not sure yet because I wanted to do a whole other podcast on demo reels, but I'm talking a lot about it now anyway. So I put it. So I did that and I created a few spots with that, and I made them look real. I grabbed the logos from real organizations and slapped them on, pretending that they were real. So it wasn't outside the scope of reality. That I'm like, oh, he probably worked with this, this local Miami coalition against drugs. Like, there's no reason to say I didn't work on that. Now, what was the coup de grace for me was the company I was working for got a whole bunch of Spanish directors and European directors came in, and all of their all their raw footage and all of their commercial spots came in. And the stuff coming from Europe was stunning, like Nike quality footage, like insane stuff. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So without anyone knowing, I went and I just stole that shit. Excuse my French. I literally just grabbed that footage because the directors were not here. They weren't here. They weren't in Miami. They were just being repped, and they would fly them in. So all their footage just showed up. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take that because I was in charge of it all because I was in the dub room.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
I built up Nike commercials. I built up I built up like perfume ads and all of these high end. And then they were European companies, so it looked like I was huge.
I'm huge in Europe.
I'm huge. I'm like, yeah, I've been working on that. So if anyone asked, I'm like, yeah, I worked with that company there. Who'd you work with? It's like Bob.
Francesco.
Yeah, Bob. No, yeah, Francesca. Yeah, Francesca. I forgot her name. She was wonderful. I just work freelance mostly. I don't work with a company. So that way there was like no way for them to find out. Like there's literally no way. And that was the reel I sent out. I didn't change my demo reel for 2 years. From the moment that first demo reel I sent out. Even with
got a ton of work
off of that demo reel, I got so much work that I never updated it because all the stuff that I was working on was so subpar comparatively to what I already had on my demo reel. Even though that stuff was real, I just kept pushing, and that's where the hustle came. And that's something you can't teach. That's something that just has to come out of you. And that's what I did with that. So that demo reel just kept selling, and then when I tried to bring that demo reel to LA, that's when I got the slapdown.
Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, I know this director.
That was
pretty sure you didn't edit this.
Yeah, that's when I first came to LA and I got my ass handed to me. In 2000, I think it was in 2000, 2001 when I first showed up, and it just the town just ate me alive. But that's another story for another day. But
it's a great point. Here's the secret that is very rarely talked about, and that is there's 1,000 very talented people standing behind us trying to scale the walls of the industry.
Oh yeah.
How are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to, if you can do that, if you can, and I won't say cheat and all that kind of stuff, but if you can lie and get there, it's editing, if you take some footage and you cut it and it's good,
that's it.
And if you've stolen this footage and the sequence you've created is awesome, that proves you can cut. Now, if you haven't actually got that job and you didn't actually do that specific thing, that kind of doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, really. You're just saying, look, here's what I can do with this footage. Maybe you'll gloss over the fact that you weren't actually the editor on that specific commercial, but there's more people studying film and television than there are in television and film every year.
Oh God,
it's
I know.
Like how are we gonna differentiate ourselves and go the extra mile? It's a difficult thing, but I think it's probably more difficult to do nowadays because of with the internet and all this kind of stuff to tracking what people actually did and IMDb and blah 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 blah. But it doesn't mean to say that there's tiny little holes that you can go in and go, oh, okay, actually, bang. What about this?
Well, commercial work now you can in the commercial niche in that specific. That was my way in. Music videos you couldn't do that with because you can easily find out. But commercials was this gray area that nobody really could figure out. Like public service announcements, huge gray area. Like, no, I mean, seriously. So you can get away with things like that. Even today, you could probably get away with certain things, but it's a lot harder. Like, it's a lot harder to get away with it.
I think it's also got to do with the fact that all of these genres don't talk to each other within the industry.
No, they
that's
don't.
A really good fact.
Yep.
Commercials people don't talk to documentary people, and documentary people don't talk to music video people. Or
TV people or feature people. Like it's two different. It's different worlds. It's
chalk and cheese. They don't, and it's about exploiting that to the best of your ability, and to if you can, that's one really good way of doing it. And say,
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I've come from music videos, or I've come from this and come from that, whichever job you're kind of pitching to, because they're not going to check up and they won't know how to check up. And I think that's a little hole to be exploited, and to try and creep through all of these little things. They do matter. So yeah, it's a great thing that none of these people talk to each other.
And
whereas within that genre they do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you're a TV guy and you try to hustle another TV guy, forget it. You can't. You won't. But if you're a commercial guy trying to get into TV, you can hustle that. It's because there is that weakness, like you said. There's a weakness in the defenses there, and you might be able to wiggle a way in, And I don't want to paint this whole thing as like, oh, you have to be dishonest or this or that. I'm like, look, this is the realities of our business. It is brutal.
Totally.
It's brutal, man. It's brutal. And and the perfect statement you said earlier was like, there's more people studying to be in the business that are actually in the business. So that says volumes about what the business is around the world, not just in the US or in the UK, but around the world.
Every country in the world. It's crazy. And it's like, when I get young people coming up to me and say, how do I get my first break and stuff like that? I mean, yes, I do talk about all this kind of stuff, but I also say, look, the other major thing is the work ethic. You have to be prepared in those first 2, 3, 4, 5 years to break your back and not want to go down the bar at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock with your buddies, because, that first couple of years, I'm earning no money and they're exploiting me and I'm doing all this work. It's, I always looked at it, and I got that as well. And I always looked at it as a testing period. It's like, we have such, the higher echelons in film and television, they have such an abundance of people to choose from. They want people who only are going to put their heart and soul into this and kind of forget every single other thing in their life about this. So it's kind of like that. I always thought about it as like, if someone says to me, and I've worked 16 hours and it's midnight, and I've been in there since, 7 in the morning. And they come in, they sign off the sequence, go, great, brilliant, get my coat on, go home to bed. And just as I'm leaving the edit suite, they go, oh, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Another 3-4 hours. I would never quibble. I would never be like, because I would now. I'd be like, okay.
I know.
Double time, please.
As you get older, like, I don't know, even if you know the comedian Wanda Sykes, as you get older, less of a shit do you give.
Exactly.
Like when you're 80 years old, you'll walk out naked and just go, what? Like you just don't care.
Problem?
No. Is there a problem? So things you would never do in your 20s, you completely don't give a crap about in your 30s, and in your 40s, you just laugh at. So,
that's the thing. You're building that reel. You're building that show reel. That you're building that CV, and it's like you have to go through that. That trial by fire, because that's what separates the wheat from the chaff. That's what the senior people are looking for. They're like, okay, we're going to test you and we're going to exploit you. But if you come through that, and that's the thing which so many people drop out at. They're like, oh God, I'm not, they're not taking me. I'm the next whatever Tarantino.
Oh God, please no.
You just can't do that, because they're going, okay, fine. We'll just, I've literally got a
500
stadium of CVs over
of
here.
Course. There's 500 people sitting at the door camping out to be. It's like Fight Club. Literally, you have to stand outside of Fight Club. Remember to get into the house to Fight Club? It's exactly what it is. Like, and they'll come out and they'll berate you and they're like, oh, you're still here? Only those guys. and girls who hang and are able to go through the rough parts can come out the other end. It's like Shawshank at that point. You're going through that pile of crap to get out of the other end. And
it does end. It does.
It does. Look, I like my first internship. Not my first internship, but the one that got me my job. I worked 4 months for free, commuting an hour each way, every day. No hope of getting paid. And my friends are like, why do you keep doing them? I'm like, what else am I going to do? Stay home? At least there I'm learning stuff. I'm meeting people. And one day when my boss left, he quit. Everyone looked around like, oh, he's been here every day. Why don't we give him the job? And I made my $23,000 a year. I was so excited.
I mean, it's not always apparent where those breaks are going to come. It's like, if you just sit there if you sit there at the front, waiting for that break, it will come. People do notice these things. It's not a, it's not a.
People do notice. People do notice, and it might take some time, but people do notice. If I may quote Woody Allen, 90% of success is just showing up, and it's true. Like if you're not the most talented person in the world, if you don't have the genetics or if you're going to try to go out for certain, look at I'm sure you've seen the movie Rudy, right?
Rudy, I don't think I have seen the movie.
Dude, okay. First and foremost, you need to stop this conversation. You need to go. No, I'm joking. You need to look up Rudy.
Let me get on iTunes.
Okay, you've got to look up Rudy. Rudy is a story about this essentially a psychopath, but no, it's about this kid who was obsessed with Notre Dame football, college football here, Notre Dame specifically, and his whole life he wanted to play on Notre Dame, but he was 5'3". He had no athletic skill, and he just would not give up the dream. He literally would not give up the dream. He did everything he could to get into Notre Dame. So it took him forever. He didn't have the education. He didn't have the skill to even the knowledge, like the mind, the intelligence to get in first. He went to he did so many things to finally get into Notre Dame. So he got accepted. Then he was on the practice squad, and then it took him forever to and I won't ruin the movie for you, but he just kept going. And you'll just tear up watching this movie. It's a brilliant, brilliant movie. But that's the thing you have to do. You have to just keep pounding it. And that's in every discipline, in the film industry or any discipline in general. But you just have to, you just have to just show up, and just every day. If you show up to a place, if you're working for free and you show up to that place and you do your best job you can every day. Like I was interviewing Robert Forrester for the podcast, and he had this amazing, he's like, no matter how small the part is, just show up and do the best work you can. No matter how ridiculous the audition is, just show up and do the best work you can, because you never know who's watching. You never know who's going to give you that shot. And only good can come of you doing the best you can. That's the best. That's the thing you can do. Like I'm sure that's
awesome advice. It's awesome. You have to have an iron will. I mean, that's the thing. The people, no one gets through. No one scales the walls in wherever you're, whichever discipline.
You got to be you have to be Andy Dufresne. Andy Dufresne. Yeah.
You have to have that iron will. You have to say, how badly do I want this? And the amount of times I've been on my knees, exhausted, when I'm working with a director who's being a real
pain
expletive. And you're just sitting there going, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. This is good for my reel. This is this. And you get to a point where you go, actually, I can turn down these jobs. But it's like, it's that you need that iron will. There's no one else is going to come and save you. No one else is going to push you. No one else is going to, say, oh, you're the creative genius of the generation. Those things happen to one or two people
in a generation,
10 or 20 years. Yeah. Right. There's only so many Tarantinos or prima ballerinas. There's a great line in Mad Men. I think it was series 4 or 5. And he was saying, what was it? I can't remember. It's something around, I think his wife, what's his name? The main character's wife, married. And she was saying, oh, I really want to be a famous actress. And he basically just said, there's only one or two prima ballerinas per generation. And it's that thing. It's like, a lot of things within the industry or, within films, they sell the idea of of this
lottery ticket.
You'll be discovered and it'll be the lottery. But no, 99% of the, 99.9999 recurring of everyone else has just had, real fire in their belly and a real gut determination, a real iron will to drive through no matter what happens, no matter what the obstacles are, and just jump over and go, I'm not going to accept anything else apart from victory. And I've always had that. I was like, the amount of times I've just been.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Oh, I can't handle this. This is too much. I haven't slept for 3 days. We're broadcasting to 15 million people in, 36 hours, and we've got, 200 hours of work to do. It's just like, and the director's having a meltdown and shouting at me. It does take that persistence, and having that kind of, no surrender is, I think it's, I'm probably watched too many martial arts movies in the 80s when I was growing up.
Bloodsport.
No Retreat, No Surrender.
Obviously.
With Lauren Avden and No Retreat, No Surrender 2, which is a better movie.
How you could improve on the first one is beyond me, but with the ghost of Bruce Lee, seriously. Yeah. That was such a brilliantly bad movie. It
was so terrible. It was wonderful. It was one of those movies.
It's when a movie becomes so bad, it just the needle kicks over to good. Yeah. And there's a special that's a special thing that only a handful of movies can do. But
it's when you got 6-year-olds who could spot continuity errors in a film, you haven't made a good film.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. No, but you were saying about iron will, like, just to explain, I made a living for, 10 years, or more, 10 to 12 years or more in the South Florida entertainment business as an editor. Like that, that's insanity. And I only knew how insane it was once I got to LA. Because once I got to LA, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've done what I like. You didn't know any better. It's kind of like the person who can lift a car up because they've been lifting a car up since they were 5. Like they don't know any different. Like that's just what they can do. And it's similar because when I got here, I was just like, oh my God, like this is insane. I couldn't believe that I was able to do what I did. At the time I was able, like, it wasn't like there was a plethora of production and stuff like that going on in South Florida. It's just amazing. You sit there thinking like, and not working in the system. I was completely outside the system. I didn't work in agencies. I didn't work at networks, I've been fired from a couple of my network jobs. Gloriously fired. I always say gloriously fired. From
for what?
Staff. My staff job. My staff jobs. This is years ago. I mean, I'm not this human being anymore. But I was so full of myself when I was a kid. I mean, I was 23 years old and I was making. What was I making? About $80,000 a year in 19.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous.
Oh, is it? And living at home with no overhead. And I was making $80,000 a year, and I had, I was doing infomercials, like these long format infomercials, weekly infomercials, basically. And I literally it was like cut and paste number, like it was paint by numbers for me. Like I literally would just cut the whole thing and literally just put dissolves on every cut. Just like across, there was no pacing. There was like, I just didn't, because they didn't care. They were just, that's fine. So there was nothing to do. And I was making so much money at the time. And this is back in 1990. God, this is 96, 97. This is a couple years after I got out as a freelancer.
Wow.
So I'm making this kind of crazy money. I have no overhead. My ego is, I can't even.
The size of a cathedral.
I cannot. Notre Dame is like small. It was so out of control. It was like I was the highest paid person at the company. I would walk in with flip flops and I was just so arrogant. It was so amazing, so amazingly arrogant. Like all the other guys in the hated me. I was the only editor. So I was the creative. So I thought I had to play the creative, and the other guys wearing suits and shit like the sales guys. And
you came in a beret and a Hawaiian shirt.
And I'm like coming, I'm like, hey, and I show up at 10 and leave at 4 because that's how long it took me to do my job. And then I'm like, yeah, I need 2 days off a month because I really don't want to burn out. No, it was immense. So finally they kind of just let me go. And I was like, okay, great. It's fine. I'll just go off and be a director and commercial director. And then I spent a lot of money on my demo reel, and it didn't work out that quickly for me. And that was life. And life actually beat me down, which is what I think. Anytime I see someone who's like that, I'm like, don't worry.
Life has the universe has it's the greatest teacher. Every single time you rise a bit too high with the ego, something comes in and goes, boom. Oh, Actually,
that's not. Actually, no, we're not going to let you do that now. Sorry.
Yeah. And some pain.
Yeah, here's some pain. Dude, I can go on and on about that. But that was my first job I got fired from, and then I didn't go to another staff job for years later. But and then I was fired promptly for being the highest paid editor again. I wasn't arrogant that time. I was just the highest paid editor. I was being paid $40,000 more than anybody else in the entire.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was because I negotiated that deal with the guy, and then a new supervisor showed up and looked at the numbers like, who the hell's this guy? And they're like, well, we got to work a way out to get rid of this guy because he's costing us too much money, So it was like,
it was good while it lasted.
Oh, it was one. And then 2 days later, after I got fired, 2 days later, I opened up my business. I opened up my post house, and the rest, as they say, is history. So we've been kind of going, all great material we've been talking about. This is all good stuff. But I'll go back to what we were talking about originally. Now, when you first were starting out, how did you market yourself? Like, how did you get out there? Did you have the agency? Was the agency what did it for you?
Well, again, I was very, very lucky. One of the edit facilities that I used to do nighttime work in, just practicing, I got friendly with one of the assistants who was there, on the night shift, making tea and getting
crumpets, teas and crumpets.
Strong whiskey for the the heavy drinking editors.
Yes,
and we became kind of friends, and we went out, partying a bit, and then she just sort of rang me and said, I've got a new job. I'm working at an agency. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about because it was all luck. It was like, I just made friends. I mean, that's that. If I take anything out of that, it's like, I'm constantly surprised by how quickly people's careers move in this industry. And it's like, I've been in edit suites with directors who talk to the person who's bringing their tea and toast in the morning, and they talk to them like crap. And you're like, dude, that could be in 2 years' time, that could be the exec producer you're working for. You never, ever, ever talk to anyone, and always make friends with everybody. You never know what that person's going to be doing in 6 months. And this was a prime example.
Yeah, I completely and totally agree with you at 100%. You never know. You just don't know. And that's something, and I was going to ask you about networking and relationships as far as part of your business, starting out. It's everything. Without relationships, without networking with people, it's
nothing.
You have nothing.
No one's going to sit there with a big golden hand and touch you on the shoulder and go, it's you're a genius. We're going to give you, millions of pounds to do whatever you want, and you're free. You'll get final cut and da 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 da.
It doesn't
work like that. You've got to go out there. You've got to charm people. Be friends with people, charm people,
build relationships, build relationships.
Discussions about filmmaking and
editing.
Be humble, editing, directing, whatever, camera, whatever you're going into, and be humble and be passionate, and be willing to work 24 hours a day. But I think it is that it's like creating a network as quickly as possible and as large as possible, and when a bunch of people working at the edit facility or the production company or the broadcast say, oh, do you want to come out for a drink tonight, or do you want to go, we're getting a bunch of us going for coffee or whatever, I would always say yes. And I would always try and charm people and, you know, be friendly and stuff like that, because the amount of leads and the amount of, oh man, guess what? Someone's dropped out. I thought of you, you know, based on that conversation we had the other day in that bar or in that pub or in that coffee shop or when we went out for pizza or whatever. That's what it is. It's like,
I'll tell you,
there's a classic thing in editing. It's like, and I remember my early agent told me this. One of my early agents who gave me so much great advice. They said, listen, you're going to be locked in a room. This director is going to be locked in a room with you for 2 months or a month or 6 weeks or 3 months, whatever, how long the project is. They don't care you're a genius. They're not interested in that, whether you think that you're a genius.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
They would rather work with someone who's average and a really nice person than someone who's a genius and a real pain in the ass. And that really sunk in for me. It's like, okay, I get it. You know, if you're locked in a room with someone, a dark room, watching the same thing over and over and over again and making tiny adjustments, if it goes wrong, that's like doing a prison sentence. You know, it's
we've been there.
Not cool.
Yeah.
It's not cool. It's like, it's really important to be as cool a person as you can in anyone. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what they're going to say. And the other thing about editors as well is that you're never in the room when decisions are made. You know, you're always out. You're not on the shoot. You're not in the production meetings. You're not in any of these things, which pretty much everyone else in the process is. We are isolated by ourselves. So all we've really got is our abilities, but secondly, our personality and our charm. And that is really, really important. So, you know, when a bunch of senior producers come in and watch a cut and they're really dismissive and they don't even look at you, it's not about getting really angry about that and stuff like that.
No.
It's about, hey man, you know, how can I be as cool as possible? Because as I say, we are probably the only people who are just by ourselves within the industry. We're not party to all those conversations and all those meetings and all that shooting and production.
No, absolutely. I'll tell you a quick story of once I worked for Sky. It was like either MTV or something like that. And I was doing promo work, and the production manager calls me up and she's like, "Look, we have a gig for you. The producer's a little bit of a pill. Do you mind?" And I'm like, no, I don't mind. I like at that point in the game, I was so confident, and I'd been already editing for 4 or 5 years. I was very confident in my abilities, and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, man. I'll get along with whoever and whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I need the work, sure. So I went and I sat with her, and her name's Keita, and she came in like a bull in a china shop, and I literally just, whatever she said, I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. And I would roll with what she had. And then occasionally she'd send me to do something and I just wouldn't do it. And I'm like, yeah, this is the way I'm going to do it. And she just didn't know how to handle me. She had no idea. Fast forward, she's one of my best friends in the world. And she got me jobs for years to come. She jumped from company to company to company. She became the head of DirecTV promotions. So I got work from her there. She produced one of my short films. It's just like all of this stuff purely because of that one encounter with her that built that relationship up. And that could have gone very wrong. And I wouldn't have had her as that resource years to come. Like even recently, 6 months ago, you know, so it's
amazing. It's amazing. It's like, you know, when you impress and charm someone, and you get in on that level and they like your work and they like you, you know, people, you know, directors would rather change their brand of cigarettes or football team or banks, you know, things which people never actually do in their whole lifetimes. They will stand by you. And that's really, really important. It's like, you know, that time when, you know, sorry, I know you've got to meet, you know, your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever, but can you cancel it because we got to do this work? And it's like, no worries. You know that's money in the bank later on. That really is, and it people recognize those type of sacrifices.
Absolutely, it's happened to me a million times.
Yeah. But I've got some of the best work I've got out of people who were actually out of directors who were not very nice people. I mean, not, but you're just cool with them, and you're like, and you do your best for them. And even though they can be quite obnoxious, not all of them, I'm very glad to say a low percentage of the people I've worked with over the years have been obnoxious, but it doesn't matter what industry you work in, you're always going to get those type of people. Because they love your work and you're easy to work with, and you let them know that they're in charge, but also give them options and stuff like this. They'll give you work for years to come. It's just, it's amazing. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's phenomenal.
I mean, look, there's a crew that has been working with Michael Bay since Bad Boys. And Michael Bay is legendarily a pain in the ass as far as being, and I'm using the word pain in the ass as a very light way of putting it. And same thing with James Cameron. Like, there's a group of people that work with James and understand how he works, and he can be a pill, and so can Michael Bay, without question. But there's people who they get along with, and it's fascinating. I always find it fascinating sometimes when I was with someone like that had that reputation, who we were cool with, and then they throw somebody else in the mix, and then I'll be like, oh God, it's like throwing fresh meat to a lion, and I just sit back and watch it like, oh man, don't say that. Oh, that's not good. That's not going to end well for you, sir. That's not going to end well for you. So when you first started going out as an editor, you only knew Avid, right? You didn't know anything else?
There wasn't anything else at the time. I mean, I think Premiere was around, but it didn't work.
Ooh, no.
Final Cut didn't really come on the scene until
the 90s. Excuse me.
No, it was about 2004, 2005. I think version 4.5 they cut Cold Mountain on, but it didn't really work.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't until version 5 really that was sort of
starting to stable up. Yeah, started stabling it up.
It wasn't really. I mean, it wasn't any good for my type of.
No, exactly.
It never has been really any good for long form.
I'll go back farther, and for me it was Avid and Media 100.
Media 100, yes.
Media 100, and I edited one thing on Media 100. Afterwards I couldn't go back. So as it's just like, this is just like, you need me to do a dip to color. I need to go into Photoshop. I need to make the color. I need to import the JPEG, throw 2 dissolves on it, and now I have a dip to color. I'm like, are you insane? Like, are you insanity? It's like insane. Yeah. So there was Media 100, Video Cube. I don't know if you remember Video Cube.
I remember that was a sort of.
It was there for a minute. It was a minute. It was a minute. It was out for a minute. Video Cube. I learned on the montage. I don't know if you even know what the montage is. It was on Windows 3.1.1. That's what was in my film school. And it was strictly offline, like strictly offline. I never learned Lightworks either. I'd never even seen a Lightworks machine. They do mostly feature work with that.
Yeah. It's all feature dramas and stuff, isn't it?
It
was specifically made for
Filmmaker. Yeah, it was before Avid. Before Avid.
Yeah,
was able to do it.
Been on Steambex and stuff like that, wasn't it?
Right. It was before Avid took over that business. But so as a freelancer, I think it's very important to understand as many today specifically to understand as many editing softwares as you can, because it opens up your ability to work. Because now I have a post suite, and I'm like, I do the way I want to do them. And generally, if someone comes in, like, this is my system, this is what I work on. And, if you want to go, I color on DaVinci. If you want to color on Scratch, well, I can't help you. Like, I'm not going to have a Scratch system in here as well. So it is what it is. And then people generally, I've never had anybody walk away because I'm editing on Final Cut or editing on, or doing color in DaVinci. But as a freelancer, like, if you're going to place to place, you got to know Premiere, you got to know Avid, you got to know the old Final Cut and the new Final Cut. And now DaVinci's editing system is, something people are starting to use, and I think will grow into something in the next year or two, probably into something more significant than it is now. So I think it's very important for editors specifically to understand as many different, and understand Photoshop. I mean, seriously, do you know Photoshop?
I haven't used it in years. I mean,
yeah,
well,
you're at the upper echelon right now, sir. You're at the top of the mountain. Us guys down here are still struggling. We're still.
I mean, I use 9 buttons on my Avid.
Right.
I use JKL,
Yep.
Stop, play, reverse, mark in, mark out, insert, overwrite, and lift and extract.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, I don't use anything. I wouldn't know anything else, to be honest with you. That's just, I think that comes from being in reality TV for the first part of my career.
Correct.
You're not doing a lot of effects. You're basically working at 400 miles an hour all the time, churning out. Every 2 hours, they change the tapes or the discs or whatever, and they go bang, and you've got to be cutting an enormous amount of footage. So you're like bang, bang, bang. All you're doing is, and this is what we teach in Inside the Edit, which is it's all about speed, creative speed. Learning the software, fantastic. It really, and I totally agree with you. It really, why would you limit yourself in the options? Because you don't know if you're going to get a phone call tomorrow. You meet someone in the corridor of that edit facility, and they're going to say, "Oh, actually."
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Can you help us out? Someone's fallen out. It's on Premiere. Oh, sorry, I don't have to use Premiere. Why would you limit yourself when you're in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your career? It would be crazy not to just put in a couple of weeks just to learn. I mean, these programs aren't that hard. They're not difficult to learn, and they all pretty much, with the exception of Final Cut X, they're all the same. Mm-hmm. They're the same buttons. They're the same logic. It's a timeline. It's a couple of layers of video. A couple of layers of audio, and it moves left to right. It's not brain surgery. So I totally agree that it's essential. But I think what's more essential is what I call creative speed.
Mm-hmm. Being a fast cutter.
Mm-hmm. Being able to look. It doesn't matter how fast you push the buttons. What matters is how fast you can cut this in your head after watching this footage. That's where the real speed is. You can actually press the buttons in your head really, really fast. Because the film's made in your head. It's not made in. Van Gogh always used to say, I dream my painting and then I paint my dream. It's cut in your head. It's
oh
there.
Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can exercise those creative muscles in your mind, because you've only got a certain amount of time on a project, whether it's a 2-minute music video or corporate film or a commercial or a 90-minute documentary or drama. If you're fast at cutting, you're squeezing more options into that 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months, whatever your duration is. So if you're fast at cutting, I think that's the thing that's going to turn your film from a great film to an excellent film, is that you can try out more things in that same amount of time. But going back to your initial point, which I totally agree with, today's fast moving environment, and we don't know who the press has always been, always full of, Avid's just leading, Premiere in the market share, or Final Cut's coming up because, MTV have just bought, 50,000 Premiere Suite. Nobody knows what's going on. And it's just like, for us down here, actually making the films, it's like, it's so important to know every single one of them, really. Otherwise you're potentially cancelling yourself out for work. And as well, you put that on your show, you put that on the CV. It's so important.
Now the business that to address one of the points you say, being a fast editor, I was known in town as being an extremely fast cutter. I could cut very quickly. So on a business standpoint, that hurt me because at the beginning I was doing hourly. So I would be done something that would take another editor maybe 8 hours. I'd be done in 3 or 4. And I wasn't making as much. So I started doing I only do day rates. So, I'll only do a day rate. So I'll give you an 8-hour day rate. I don't do hourly anymore. And people back then, when there was money flowing in the 90s still, all the residual of the 80s was still flying around. There was some money in the 90s flying around. So that worked out well for me. So now tell me that, so obviously you are the founder of Inside the Edit, the amazing Inside the Edit as far as teaching you the creative process of editing, which there is nothing else on the planet like it. And I advise, and I preach it from the top of the mountains, anybody who's interested in editing or storytelling to take the course. And it's not a course really, it's a movement. Uh, it's a religion, really. It's the way
cult religion. Come and join this cult.
No, because the way you shot it, it's so beautifully shot and dark in this downstage with where you see the light with the honeycomb over you, and I'm like, man, this is like it's like a religion. It's like Inside the Edit's the religion. So so you should definitely check it out. So for people who don't know about Inside the Edit, please tell them a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's...
And we only have an hour left, so please keep it short.
We only have an hour left.
No, I'm joking.
I don't know if I can do that. Can we get an hour and 10? No, I mean, Inside the Edit it's basically, I looked around and I started looking at film schools, at training centers, at books, at basically everything on the net, companies like lynda.com and all this. No one was teaching the craft. No one. Even if you spend 3 years at film school, no one was teaching the craft. And if people were teaching the craft, they were not A-list people. No disrespect, but they were not people who were at the higher echelons of the industry. And the other thing is that editors learn in isolation. There's no film school that you go to, or there's no training center or anything like that, or book that gives you all of this stuff, which each individual editor crazily figures out for themselves. All of these couple of thousand things which are instinctual within the creative process. Everyone figures it out by themselves. And I just thought, that's crazy. We need to do something about that. So I sat down and wrote 1 million words over 3 years, 200 tutorials, 20 chapters. And I poured out my brain. It took me a year to just rewrite and just summarizing and conceptualizing basically stuff which had never been written down before, because editors learn in isolation. And there's this, I checked out all the prospectuses of all the film schools. That no one was teaching this stuff. No one was teaching the craft and the art form. So I just thought, okay, this is something that could be pretty cool. So I sat down and wrote, essentially the most in-depth look at editing the industry has ever seen.
The War and Peace of this. The War and Peace.
War and Peace. This is War and Peace 2.
Right.
The Revenge.
No, the Electric Boogaloo, actually. So
the Electric Boogaloo. That's breakdance, right? Yeah,
yes, it was, sir. It was.
Okay, back to the 80s there.
Yeah, the canon, baby, canon.
So, but no, also it's like what you say as well. It's like I looked at all the other courses like lynda.com and all these online stuff. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do this in an online environment because you can learn anywhere in the world as long as you've got a decent internet line. And I just looked at everything else, and it looked like all the other people who were doing it, all the other companies, they looked like it was so corporate. It was not cinematic. And I just sat there and thought, hold on a minute.
Exactly.
Your key demographic is filmmakers. This should be a cinematic experience. It shouldn't be like you're trying to sell vacuum cleaners. This looks terrible. So
there's no sizzle.
There's no sizzle at all. It's
Nothing.
like,
yeah.
It's like this has to be a cinematic experience.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time and a lot of money on the look. Every single tutorial is basically shot and cut with all the high-end aesthetics of a high-end documentary. It's like, there's 200 documentaries essentially.
Yep.
Some of them 5-10 minutes long, some of them 2 hours long, depending on the complexity. And we've broken down the creative process. So we do a whole load of very, interesting techniques and theories that are laid out in really, really cool looking graphics. But then we also go into these features called Watch Me Edit. So we've learned all this stuff. Let's go try this out on some footage. So you go into a live environment, but we've also spent a lot of money on animating the interface within
it's gorgeous.
Within Avid. To basically do what no one's ever done before, which is making the interface of any editing software. It doesn't matter what you're using because we teach the craft, not the buttons. It's another character in the movie. So we've treated the whole process like a movie a movie. You're watching a movie every single time. So not only do you get all this stuff which has never been written down before, you're actually really enjoying the process. But then the other thing as well is that, going back to what we talked about, at the very start, how do you get a reel together? How do you get a reel? Because it's very hard to get high-end footage. It's, no production company in the world has ever released broadcast footage.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out and we shot a feature-length documentary, a really, really high-end feature-length documentary. So you get all of that footage and you can use it copyright-free. And there's 45 scenes, you get 35 hours to download, and you can cut it in thousands of different ways. And you track through the course and you're basically cutting a primetime level documentary. So you get that. You also get all the, all the stuff that you get in a pro edit suite, like all the interview transcripts, the log notes from the directors, everything. You get tons and tons of technical stuff that in PDF form. But then we partnered up. You also need music, so we partnered up with what I always thought was the.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
The best music library in TV and film, and that's Universal Music, production music, and you get hundreds of tracks as well, which you're free to use. So you can build your own reel, and you can use it on your Vimeo channel and your YouTube channel. So not only do you get all this unbelievably in-depth craft knowledge, which I've never found anywhere, but you get everything you need as well: footage, music, and all the technical information. So it's a complete package. It's the world's first ever complete package for editing. So we're really proud of it. It's taken a lot of work, a lot of hours. It's taken 3 years to build, but we're in over 50 countries. We've got filmmakers in over 50 countries in the world, and the response has just been phenomenal. It really, really has.
It's been around for what, a year now, a year and change?
Just over a year. Just over a year.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's going really well, and we basically, we're in a kind of TV production schedule. So every week you get a new tutorial. 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 minutes long. We've got loads of very, very cool stuff coming up in 2016. 2016 is going to be a big year for us.
So let me ask you a question. Will this ever end? Will this ever end, as far as, will you continue to just put more and more tutorials on, or is this going to eventually go, and now you know everything?
Well, no. It's like, we're going to be doing Inside, because this is basically what we cover in Inside at the moment is everything apart from drama. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to be doing drama.
I'm sure you could do a commercial version, a music video version.
Videos. So basically the whole premise is, we're going to get guest editors in who, excuse me, who are at the top of their game to come in and basically do what I have done in documentary entertainment and kind of news and all the things that I've worked in. I cover about 6 or 7 different genres. So we're going to be getting A-list people in with A-list footage and coming in and just getting the absolute, you will never get this type of in-depth theory wherever you work in the world, whichever production company, whichever broadcaster. No one's going to sit down over your shoulder and pour out their brains for hours and hours and hours about every single.
It's like being a fly on the wall when Thelma Schumacher is editing with Martin Scorsese, something along those lines.
Exactly. That's the real, the goal for us. The whole thing, the whole premise was based around the fact that there's no A-list people teaching editing.
Not really. I've taken
there's a few people,
a workshop here and there
and stuff like that. Yeah, but they only come in, they do an hour and give some big kind of inspirational speech about when I was in the edit suite with Steven Spielberg, blah 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 blah. There's none of them pour out their brains for 20, 30, 50, 100 hours of content. None of them. No one has ever done that. Not even in film school.
Right.
So that was the goal, really. That's the aim, to have that kind of in-depth and bring in a load of really talented people to help us achieve that. So yeah, no, it's it's a big goal, but we're working our way towards it.
So you're making this into a brand essentially, which is amazing. You've actually created a brand, and you're turning it into the one-stop shop for editing. Eventually you will have covered every genre that you can, every kind of, from webisodes to music videos to commercials to high-end professionals in each of their disciplines. But you're creating a brand, a Rolls-Royce brand, if you will, you're creating the Apple of editing knowledge.
Absolutely. And with that, you have to have
high quality,
completely high-end aesthetics. You have to differentiate yourself from the lynda.coms of the world and all the other kind of, you have to put in an enormous amount of time, money, and effort and creative effort. And I'm very lucky to work with some extremely talented effects guys and people like that who have made that happen. It is a high-end brand. It's like the bar is, high. Way above. Yeah, it has to be, because, how do you differentiate yourself in a market? You can't just have amazing theory and concepts and stuff like that anymore. You have to go the extra mile and provide a whole experience. I think if the Apple store has told us anything, it's
Jesus.
You are part of a lifestyle, a community, a life choice. It's an amazingly powerful brand, and we've actually taken that concept and tried to do it with Inside the Edit. So you really get the feeling that you're getting a lot more than what you're paying for.
It's funny enough that you say that. Like, I'm actually going to start creating one of my first courses. Indie Film Hustle is grown as quickly as it has because phenomenal. Because of what I've been trying to put out content like this, and I in a similar way with what you've done with Inside the Edit, not nearly the expansion or the growth or the size of what you guys have done, but in my small way, I've been trying to put out content that is at a level that no one else is talking about. Like and like this conversation we've just had. There's volumes of great knowledge in there and tips that you don't hear. You and I have been around. We don't hear this. They don't teach this. How to put together a demo reel. Like, really, how do you do it? How do you go out and hustle this or how to hustle that? So I'm trying to create that with Indie Film Hustle, and I think it's one of the reasons why it's grown so fast. And it's starting to gain respect within the niche of independent filmmakers. But I'm also
people respond to quality. That's the bottom line. The fact that you've created something which is totally unique and such high quality. People are not suckers. They're not idiots. When I'm buying products, I'm into that kind of, I look for quality above anything else. And, I'm flabbergasted by how quickly Inside the Edit has grown, but I'm even more flabbergasted by how quickly, Indie Film Hustle has grown. But you take 2 minutes of a look at it and the content, you're like, oh yeah, well, of course it is. It's such high level. And it's that thing. It's just like nobody's teaching this stuff. No one's giving you this original content to this level.
Right.
So no, it's
and I'm actually taking your template of Inside the Edit, and I'm actually going to create my course, my editing course. It's called Inside the Edit 2. No, I'm joking. No,
someone get the lawyers on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm creating courses on things that are that I do well. And one of the specific things, the first course I'm going to do is how I was able to do social media and how I've been able to grow to 20,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram within 90 days. And true fans, like real people, and how I'm able to focus that and get traffic from that, and how to build that relationships up, and how not only the techniques to get there, but also how to maintain it, how to grow it, how to get content, what the content is, blah, 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 blah. So I'm actually creating that course right now, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to be putting it together. And then I start looking at Inside the Edit. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not crazy. I'm not doing 200 tutorials, but that's just mental, as you say. And I'm not writing a million words on the subject matter, because there are other people talking about this, but not at the level I'm doing, and definitely not at the level for any. I'm going to do 2 courses, one aimed at filmmakers and one aimed at everybody else. And it is, I'm using you as a template. I'm like, okay, I need to hit this quality level on my stuff, because that's just, I can't just throw up. I see a lot of these courses, like you were saying, like you go to Linda and you're like, welcome to Creative Editing 101.
This is the trim tool.
This is the trim tool. Now, I've been editing local car commercials
for
27 years. Not that there's anything wrong with editing car commercials, everyone. I edited car commercials for 4 months, so I know how it is, but not at the highest echelon of the craft. Let's just put it that way. So the sizzle is something I try to teach as much as I can, and people don't get that you need sizzle. Without in today's world, without sizzle, even if you have the greatest content, you could have made this content and not sizzle nearly as much, and the content would have still been amazing. Without all the great graphics, without all the packaging, the cinematic vibe of it, you could have gone down to Linda route if you wanted to, and just put out great content, and you could have still had the exact same scripts, the exact same content, but not nearly presented in this beautiful way that you've presented it. And it's an inspiration to me, like, okay, well, if I'm going to do my stuff, I got to take it up a notch. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. I can't shoot it on my iPhone. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm not going to shoot it on my iPhone. I'm going to be shooting it on a cinematic camera. I'm going to color grade it. I'm going to do graphics on it and all this kind of stuff to make it look as cinematic as possible without going stupidly crazy like you did. Because you're crazy. You're absolutely nuts, man.
I'm a little bit nuts. I don't mind admitting that now. Now that it's
done.
Yeah.
No, I can't even imagine the conversation. I can't even imagine the conversations you had at the beginning of this. Okay, so this is what I want to do. I can't. Like, to the first person the first person you talk to, you're like, okay, so this is my idea. It's going to be called Inside the Edit, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And people are like, what are you, absolutely mad? But you and I both have something that is fast, and I don't know how you feel about it, but to be able to create as a creator, because you and I both are creators, and we're both artists in our own ways, to take something that did not exist. Inside the Edit was in your mind, and there was no InsideTheEdit.com. There wasn't even a history of you doing this kind of stuff. It's not like it's something, there was no history about it at all. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And
hyperlink was when I started this internet company. I had no idea. The whole internet thing just passed me by, but
right.
It's like I knew nothing about it. But everything's in your mind. Filmmaking is in your mind. Walk out onto the street right now, wherever you are in the world. Everything that's not green or brown started off in someone's mind.
And to bring,
apart from nature,
right,
the cement you walk on, the car, the television, the advertising board, the cinema, everything is in your mind, and that's where I certainly, the big battle I've been fighting for the last year of Inside the Edit is fighting against, not fighting against, but certainly just sort of going, oh, hold on a minute, I don't care that this is 4K, or I don't care that this is got 64-bit background rendering. I don't care about any of that stuff. As John Lennon said, I'm an artist. You give me a tuba, I'll get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's the artistic side is deeply underrepresented in today's world. It's all about the technology and this and that, and does it have this lens and that, and
the gear porn,
the RAM, and it's just like you know that manual inside out, but it's like, can you tell a story? That's what the whole industry is in deep need of. It's people who can tell stories. No one cares whether you've memorized the manual to that stuff. There's 1,000 people or 10,000, 1 million people within the industry who can do that better than you. It's concentrating on being a storyteller, and that's what we do in Inside the Edit. And it's concentrating away from all of that techno porn. It's just I'm still flabbergasted by it, but
it's definitely a sub niche of a niche of the filmmaking niche without question. And but I was just saying earlier, like I can only imagine the amount of, I don't know what the word is, but that you've been able to create something from nothing and built this huge community, and you're helping people, and it all came literally out of your head. And
I love it. It's fantastic.
And I've been able to do that with Indie Film Hustle in my small way, that literally there was nothing, there was no URL. I was out of the game doing other things for about 3 years. I was still in and out of business, still ran my post house, but I was not in it heavily. And I literally came back out of nowhere and launched Indie Film Hustle and turned it to what it is now. And now I get fan mail, and I get texts, not texts, but tweets and Facebook messages and emails of people like, man, thank you for that last podcast. It's changed, really changed me. I had one guy
Isn't
email.
It a wonderful feeling.
Oh my God. I started
that love and
I started printing out the emails and the messages so I can have them in a book somewhere. So when I get down, I can just go back and read, because there was one podcast I did with, on crowdfunding, and I forgot the person's name, but they messaged me, and they're like, I wasn't even going to continue going down this road, but because I just was so disheartened, like I can never get my movie made, I can never get it out there. But after I heard this interview with you and Emily, you guys showed me that I can do this, and I'm going to go off and do my dream now. And I was like,
awesome.
Oh my God, like that's so amazing. So it's a high that people don't understand unless you're doing it. And that this is, that this podcast has turned into the #1 podcast in filmmaking on iTunes. And
that is unbelievable. Within how many months?
That was in about 2.5 months. It took about 2.5 months to 3 months around. To get to
what you're doing is 1,000% right, Alex. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's just like you found something and created something again out of absolutely nothing. Which people are just responding to, like, oh no, this is phenomenal. I mean, I haven't even heard that type of growth before.
Well, and by the way, it's not only in filmmaking. I have it in if you type in cinematography, I'm right behind the ASC. If you type in visual effects, I'm #1. If you type in film, like there's certain keywords that, like all these big keywords, I was like, what? Like, how am I? For a moment, I was ahead of the ASC. I'm like, I have 2 podcasts about cinematography. How is this possible? But because of the growth and the strength of the entire brand or the entire show, it kind of overpowers even smaller niches like that. But it's fascinating, and it's so humbling. Honestly, it's humbling. And 2016 is going to be an insane year. I can only imagine if I can continue to grow like this, like you have, like what you've done in a year is insane. But if I could continue to grow the way I'm growing in the next year and make my movie that I'm planning to make and go through that whole process, it's going to be an interesting journey. So, I
have absolutely no doubt that you will, Alex. It's phenomenal what you've achieved in 4 months. It's amazing. It's another year. God, imagine where you're going to be.
I can only imagine where we're going to be, because it's starting to. What's funny about what we do is it snowballs. It literally snowballs, like the little bit, like you start like, okay, I got 20 followers on Twitter. I got 150 followers. I got 100 followers on Twitter, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got 10,000. And then the thing that people don't understand is when you start gaining momentum in any aspect of your business, whether that be in editing, whether that be a filmmaker. It starts to grow, and it starts to become a little easier to grow and faster to grow, because
more creates more. It always has.
It's just fascinating I'm just fascinated to watch that all of a sudden now I'm inundated with interview requests. Like I have so many people wanting to be on the show, and now I'm like, I literally have shows for 4 months out now. And I'm like, it's like insanity. And I got content coming in like crazy. So I've got all this high-end content coming out, and it's like, how you grow, it becomes easier. So it's just started. It's like they always say, it's like, it's easy to be a millionaire. You just got to get that first million.
That's what they say, isn't the first million is the hardest. The next 10 is it's a cinch.
and that's the same thing with financing a film. Like if you got $100,000, I can get you another 300, but getting that first 100 is a bitch. But I wanted to thank you, man. I wanted to thank you for coming back on the show. I wanted to kind of go into a little bit more detail about the black arts of not editing, but of being an editor, and actually the survival of being an editor and a thriving of being an editor. And I think we've thrown out a lot of good gems. And I just love talking to you. I'm sure I'll have you on the show again soon.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
And
it's always nice chatting.
And then I'll put a link to and guys, I'll have a link on the show notes for Inside the Edit, where you'll get a special discount, Indie Film Hustles discount, and I'll have that in the show notes as well. So I'll get you all that information soon. Paddy, man, thank you so much for being on the show again, brother. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, absolute pleasure. Really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, very best of luck with Indie Film Hustle. It's gonna be world domineering, I'm sure.
May the force be with you, sir.
Take care, brother.
Now, I did warn you that we were going to geek out, and we definitely did, without question. I hope you guys picked up something from that episode, because there's a lot of wonderful gems in there as well, as the last episode that I did with Paddy. It was just two old editing dogs sitting down and talking, but we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now, back to the show. I would have killed to been in that conversation when I was starting out in my career, whether being an editor or in any kind of part or discipline within the film industry. So I really hope you guys got something out of it, because I had a ball. I think I think you feel that through the earbuds that you're listening through right now. So thanks again for listening, guys. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/041, and you can get all the show notes there. And don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave us an honest review of the show. It helps us out dramatically. So thank you again so much, guys. Oh, and a little update. We should be releasing the Twitter hacks, how to get 10,000 true fans in 10 weeks course in the next week or so. So I will keep you guys all informed about that through either my social media. If you're on our list, we're going to be emailing you out about that. And of course, if you want to get on our list, just head over to indiefilmhustle.com and sign up, because you get a bunch of cool stuff when you sign up, and you keep updates with what we're doing at Indie Film Hustle, and get you a lot of great information as well. So keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.